Good morning. Well, welcome everyone. We have John Butler here with us today on Let's Talk Real Estate with Kim Meeker. A lot of people know him as the bald guy with the red tie. So, John, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning and thank you. I'm really excited to see what comes out of today. It should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, as I was sharing with you, and I want to share with our viewers that this is our first, I would relaunch of Let's Talk Real Estate with Kim Meeker. We actually put this out in 2008, 2009 before COVID, and we're bringing it back on today. So I just want to let you know how humbled and grateful I am for you to be our first guest to relaunch the show.
Well, thank you. It's exciting. I'm very proud of you. I know, as we were just chatting before the show here, is that sometimes we get these big visions and ideas, and then in American culture, we want it to happen right now. It
Yes.
should be instant gratification and stuff like that. But sometimes ideas have to germinate and kind of stew, and then eventually you get that end product. And so I know you've been working on this for a while now, and so here we are. So enjoy this mountaintop experience. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Well, John, one of the reasons too, I really wanted you to also be one of our first guests is I just love your journey and how you got to being a successful real estate agent, but most importantly, how you got here. And you've shared certain things with me and over the years when we worked together with our previous broker, and you brought me into your world, which was, I feel like, a huge gift to me, but also very personal for you as well. And sharing your book with me about your journey and how it all began. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. You picked me up literally when I fell on my face after the first chapter. I didn't know if I was going to get through it. I was in tears when I sent you that text message that morning. And when you said, you know what, it gets better, I thought, okay, I'm going for it. So thank you. But would you like to kind of share with us, share with us where that all started, and if you're good with that?
Oh, of course, yeah. I'm literally an open book, being a
Yeah.
writer and whatnot. So for those who don't know, I've had a very colorful life. It's been very adventurous and quite a journey. And so my story kind of starts in the armpit of California, known as Bakersfield. And Bakersfield is, as the last part of that name describes, is mostly a field. And so I grew up racing motocross and dirt bikes because, when you're a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid and you could just go ride a dirt bike for miles. And, I come from the era where as long as you're home by the street lights, by the time the
Yeah.
street lights came on, so what a great way to grow up. And then I was very focused on, I wanted to be a professional motocross racer, and was well on that journey to do that. And everything was going well. And then when I was about 15 years old, I found out my mom had cervical cancer.
Mhm.
And so as a young man who doesn't know how to deal with emotions or problems, my solution was just to go hide in a field on my dirt bike and kind of push all of that negativity away. And unfortunately, as she went through her journey for about a year and a half, this was back in 1998. And so at the end of my junior year, she unfortunately passed on to the other side there. And the morning of June 5th, I walked in with my stepdad and my sister, and we turned the corner. And, I don't know if you've ever seen someone that has left their body, but there's a very interesting stare that they have if their eyes are open, and hers was. And so she was just staring right into my soul. And it was a stare that I'll never forget. And it really, that was one of those, there's moments in your life where it becomes like a chapter, an ending of a book and then a beginning of another.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, I started this whole new journey where I went from going, from being a 3.8 grade point average student, motocross racer, I was going to go to college and be a business major and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, all that was thrown out the window. And it's like, okay, well, how do you survive without your mom? Because my mom was the foundation of our household. And so as I went through that journey of being 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, I didn't necessarily have the healthy support systems in place. And so I decided to make decisions that, was trying to self-medicate, and numb that pain. And so basically I went on to a psychedelic adventure from 18, 19, 20 years old. And so I always say that I dropped out of college, but I got my master's degree in psychology from LSD University.
Yeah.
And but the reason I did that, looking back now, retrospect's always 2020. But what I was doing is I was self-medicating, and but really I was trying to discover who I was
Hmm.
after her loss, because she was so much a part of my identity and literally 50% of who I am, right? Like, you're 50% of your parents. And
Yeah.
so um, it was very rough. I was homeless, not on the streets, but definitely surfing couches for about 2 years. I think in 2 years I moved 24 times. And but the whole time I was journaling, and I was writing. I started writing probably when I was about 14 years old. And so at
So
some
is so is journaling real quick. So journaling was your safe zone. That's like where you escaped to be who you
And you know what
were.
actually inspired it? Remember Doogie Howser,
Hmm. Yeah.
that show? And remember how he'd always type out like how his day went?
Yeah.
So that's where I originally got the idea from, was Doogie.
Really? Okay.
And so I remember when I was 14 and I got my first computer, I'm like, "Ooh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna write." And
Yeah.
so, but it turns out that I was actually pretty good at writing. Because when I was about 19 years old, I read my dad a little snippet of what was going on in the hell that was my life at that point. He's like, "Wow, that sounds really good. That could be a book." I was like, "Wow, a book, huh?" And then so that kind of planted that seed. And at that time, Oprah was huge,
Yeah.
and Tom Cruise was jumping on her couch because he was in love with Katie Holmes at the time. And I was like, I want to jump on Oprah's couch. I want to sell 1 million books. And at that time, I'm homeless. I'm unemployable. Besides selling Dickweed shirts, which is, I'm sure we'll get into that. And and so I figured if I could write a book, then I would be rich and I'd be on Oprah, and life would be good. And that's my meal ticket. And so I went down. I left Bakersfield to go down to Ortega Highway to live with my aunt. And I told myself I was just going to live there because my current situation at the time was falling apart. I said, I'm just going to live there for 2 weeks. I'm going to write a book in 2 weeks. And then by the end of the summer, I'll be on Oprah, and then I'll be rich, and then life will be good. And life doesn't always work out that way, right? And so
Right.
what we were just talking about, your journey of making this podcast, is sometimes you get the idea, and then sometimes there's the growth gap, the
Hmm.
time that it actually takes to blossom and be fulfilled. And so, I started writing my book at 19, and I think I published it when I was about 26. So it's about a 7-year journey. And so I remember when I first got my first box of books from the publisher, it was quite a mountaintop experience, much like you're having today. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
Well, and I think that what everyone needs to also see here is that your even though you went through the huge pain of losing your mom, and being the man of the house, you had your stepdad, right? Through marriage, right? And your sister. But, some similarities that I felt to you when reading that book that I didn't know until I read the book to myself was I have siblings as well, right? I mean, I was raised with them being known as my brothers,
Right.
but I'm really my own individual person. And
Yep.
they're 8 and 10 years older than me. So I did kind of grow up as a single child, but it was just me and my mom.
Yeah.
So, when that she was your person,
Yeah.
right? She was your whole. And so going through and losing that and grief is a very challenging thing, right? And so for us to go through as humans, but you, even though you weren't aware of it at the time, but subconsciously, you were able to shift that into something that gave you all these dreams.
Right.
Like if it's not, it's definitely not something that you wanted to ever have happen, losing your mom. But had that have not happened, you would not have had possibly those dreams of being someone even bigger and better, right? Like, of course, motocross, it can be huge, as an athlete. A lot of people don't realize, motocross, you're an athlete, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
then
very much so.
and it's very challenging and tasking and competitive and all the above. But because of that situation and being at your aunt's and your dad telling you, that could be a great book. Like just all those wheels were turning in your head, regardless if you were homeless and on people's couches. Something was the beginning to something really big was happening. Something was being birthed there, right?
100%. And,
Yeah.
um, so going through that psychedelic phase of my life of 18, 19, 20 years old. Um, and I know a lot of people they have a lot of misunderstandings about psychedelics. They think that it's the hippie, the hippie, colorful phase of things. But there was something very needed during that time where, I was basically trying to figure out who I was. And those psychedelics kind of really, uh, once you buy the ticket and take the ride, you're on for the ride. You can't get off the roller coaster. And so the thoughts and the rearranging of reality and just all of those things of discovering who I was times 1,000. I mean, your
Mhm.
thought process on one of those experiences just is on super speed, light speed. And so it was really fascinating to kind of see the inner workings of my mind and my soul, and really have a different perspective of reality and life. And so that's why I think I have such a different approach to this business, to life, to writing, to artistry, all this kind of things. I don't encourage people to go jumping into it. It's certainly not something that you want to play with willy nilly. But for me at that time, that was a very important phase.
Yeah.
And the lessons that I learned from it, you can't gain anything until you lose everything. And so I lost everything during that phase of my life. But as I lost all the leaves of the tree, new branches, new twigs, and new leaves were coming. And so I started to realize the seasons and patterns of life. And
Mhm.
especially having documented my life through the journals and stuff like that, I could see the patterns and the ups and downs, the valleys and the mountaintops, and then be able to articulate that and put that into book form and share that with people that are going through tough times. Because when you're going through a tough time, it's so easy to be like, oh my gosh, no one's ever gone through a tough time before, ever before. I'm the only person to experience pain. But when you can read another book that someone's gone through a very similar journey as you, it brings comfort and hope and inspiration and encouragement. And what's beautiful about writing, and this is a theory that I have, is that writing is eternal. And that's why it's very interesting that the Bible was such a very powerful thing. In the beginning of the book of John, it talks about how the Word was God, and God was the Word. And I'm totally butchering that, but essentially what that means is, as a writer, when I sit down and I write something in the present moment, someone in the future is reading what I wrote in that present moment. And so when they're in the future and they're reading that, they're now reading something that I wrote in the past. But it's still relevant because it's this eternal, the infinity
Right.
sign.
The infinity. Uh-huh.
And so that's why all art, whether it's music or it's writing or painting and things like that, something that was done in the present moment, and creativity took, the unseen and made it seen, which that was God's 101 business, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's something very eternal and beautiful about that. So if anybody's thinking about writing or developing their art or whatnot, I would highly encourage you to do so, because it's not only just great for yourself, but what that can do for other people is very inspiring.
So you really, and we talked about this earlier too, is you're always coming from a place of contribution, John. Like even when you went through that period, being, testing out the drugs and trying to find out who you were, right, with your friends and stuff. And a lot of people, have done that, but where it took you and the path that it took you to where you utilize ideas that came into your mindset in order to thrive, right? And just stay alive.
Yeah.
So that also birthed some other entrepreneurial gifts that you didn't know that you had as well, your mindset and stuff. So share a little bit about where that took you on your journey of entrepreneurship, if you will.
So as far as the entrepreneurship, I would definitely attribute a lot of that to DNA. My father is an incredible marketing genius, and really my whole Butler side of the family. They're very marketing oriented. To put it in good context here, you know, a lot of families will get together for their family get-togethers and they'll talk about sports and, you know, their sports families and stuff like that. What we would do as a family is, you know, somebody would say something funny because we're all verbally witty and our family's awesome. But someone would throw out an idea like, oh, wouldn't this be a cool product? And then somebody else would chime in and say, oh yeah, and you can market it this way and you can create this promotion and this campaign. Like that's just naturally how we talk.
That's nice.
And so from a very young age, marketing was just in my DNA. And so I come from a family where my mom and my biological father, they split 2 weeks after I was born. And so it was kind of that, you know, passing little John off between the parents and stuff like that. And I adore my father. He's just a wonderful human being. And I just always wanted to be next to him, be with him and all that kind of stuff. So when it was time to spend time with dad, he would take me to the office and I would sit in the corner of the office and play with toys or whatever, but I would listen to him negotiate. I'd listen to him talk about marketing campaigns with his art directors and stuff. My dad is one of the original pioneers of putting televisions in Suburbans back in the 80s. And so he was one of the ones that came up with that concept. He was also, there's so many things that he did during the automotive industry of the late 70s, 80s, 90s and stuff like that. And then when the internet revolution came together, he was a pioneer of that as well. So that's kind of my biological stock, if you will. And so as a young man, as a kid, really, I would listen to him do all these things. And so when I was in preschool, I would get my GI Joes because I realized all the toys at school sucked. And then so I would tell the kids, hey, I'm going to bring my GI Joes, bring me $1, give me the $1, and then you could play with my toys during recess. But then I need you to give me the toy back. So I was renting out my toys, not selling them. I was renting them because I wanted the toy back, but I wanted to keep the money.
Yeah.
And so that was at 4 years old. And so that got busted when my mom, I think we're at McDonald's, and she was short a few bucks for the meal or whatever. And I pull out a big old wad of cash as, you know, a 4-year-old. And she thought I stole it. And then, so that was kind of my original business, was renting out my GI Joes for $1 a day on the playground. And then I was always the top seller for all the fun campaigns at school that happens, you know, cookies and all that kind of stuff. I would paint rocks and then sell them to the neighbors. And I'd say, well, you could use it as a tire stop or you could put in your garden and stuff like that. Now, I'm not an artist with paint. It was literally just, you know, finger paint on a rock.
Ideas, though.
And I would sell because I was a cute, charming kid that they would give it to me, right? And then I think I was about 10 or 11. I started a pooper scooper business. And then when I was 14 and I was in the motocross racing thing, my mom and stepdad, they realized, well, hey, if we're going to be at the races every weekend, might as well try to turn this into a tax write-off of business expense. And so we started a trackside motorcycle accessories business called Factory Edge Accessories, where we would change tires, sell goggles, you know, little accessories that, you know, racers, they forget on the way to the track. And so they need to pick something up. And so that was one of my first businesses. And then so I created all the advertising and marketing campaigns. And so I did that as a 14, 15-year-old. And then after my mom passed away, I was with one of my racing buddies named Brady, and he had a clothing company that they started, or they did a batch of shirts basically, and it was called Dickweed. And so Dickweed was named after their wiener dog named Sir Reuben Dickweed the 21st. And so after my mom passed away, I had a businessman that came into my life, and he said, hey, I got $20,000 to invest. I'm looking for, you know, a creative project. You know, do you got any ideas? And then so I talked to Brady, and he's like, why don't you do Dickweed? And so we started selling Dickweed shirts. But the businessman, he was kind of a father. And so he's like, I don't like the name of that. So he didn't want anything to do with it. And so my stepdad, I pitched the idea to him, and he's like, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Might be some good experience for you. So my stepdad gave me $650 to start the Dickweed t-shirt business as I was going into my senior year of high school. And immediately it just blew up. This is in Bakersfield, California. And in your senior year, you can join the work experience program. And, you know, with the thought of you're going to go work at McDonald's or Taco Bell. And they sign your little, your sheet says, okay, they showed up, give them an A+ or whatever. Well, I went to the teacher and I said, hey, I own my own business. Can I be in the work experience program? And they're like, well, we've never had that happen, but I guess so. And so I was able to give myself a grade, which of course was always an A plus.
Yeah,
Um,
of
and then,
course.
so the Dickweed shirts, that's what kind of got me through that rough phase I was talking about earlier, that 18, 19, 20-year-old stage, because I would get enough shirts and I could sell them, and then I would live off of that money. So I didn't have to get a real job per se. And then when I was about 21, I started a Christian motocross ministry. This is after I gave my life to Christ, and I just really had a burning passion to take motocross, which was my passion growing up, and then see if I can use that as a form of ministry. And so I became the promoter of the freestyle motocross team, Christian Motocross, called CMX. And I would be the guy on the microphone at these events, oh, look at a heel clicker, can, knack, all that kind of stuff. And so I was the promoter, because I'm just a natural marketer and promoter and things like that. So that's just a couple of businesses. I don't know if you want me to keep going, but that was part of it.
Yeah, but that was where, you birthed all that and you got the experience and you got the quick success, right? And so within that, of course, success leaves clues, right?
Right.
And so with the clues that it left for you, you just kept building on top, on top, on top until you got that break. So let's fast forward. When did you decide to get into real estate? When did you actually decide to come on over to, the real estate side? I know you moved down to Temecula. So kind of take us fast forward into that area so we can talk a little bit more about your real estate business and how those experiences you've utilized in your business to today with your marketing, the bald guy, where that was birthed from and such.
Absolutely. So I'll end off on the previous, what we just chatted on, because I'm a big believer in design and symbolism and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure a lot of people know this. So I'll point this out, and it's probably going to blow your mind. So you see the logo behind me here?
Yeah.
See, that's a T-shirt.
Yeah.
See, that's a helmet.
Yeah.
And see the red tie?
Uh-huh.
So when you talk about stacking and building all these different businesses and stuff like that, so the T-shirt business, that's kind of a hidden symbolism in there, and then the helmet, and then the red tie. And so, because that's where I learned a lot of my promotions, was from the clothing company and whatnot. So I don't know if a lot of people even know about that. So I thought I'd point that out to you
I did
on
not
your
know about
show.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. So in regards to getting into real estate, at that point, I had left Bakersfield. I arrived in Temecula on January 2nd, 2004. And I had literally spent my last $5 on beer in Boston, because I went to Boston for about 6 weeks, because I was at one of those transition points of life
Yeah.
where I wasn't sure, like everything kind of closed down in Bakersfield. All the leaves had fallen off the tree again. I had a long-term relationship that ended. The ministry got closed down. All of these things started closing down. And so I want to point that out, is that, sometimes we go through life and there are things that fall away, and we try to struggle and hold on to it. And we go, oh my God, you go through that panic stage, but that's just the natural progression of the seasonal phases of your life.
Yeah.
And so for those that are listening to this, and maybe things are closing down, you lost a job, maybe someone passed away, relationships fell apart or whatever, that's okay. You're going to get through it. And really, it's just the natural progression of life. So I arrived here completely broke. All I had was my laptop, my Bible, and my clothes. I moved in with my grandparents in Temecula. And then her big thing is she wanted me to go to college. And she said, hey, why don't you come down to Temecula, live with us, and go to college? Because, if you get your college degree, life magically is going to be perfect.
It's going to change. Yeah.
Right. And so I was homeless again. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll come live with you. And then I ended up getting, my only job experience at that point was being a waiter. So I went to all the restaurants, and I was looking for a job, and they all got shut down. Nobody wanted to hire me. And then I went to Macaroni Grill, and I walked in to get an application, and I noticed that there's all these people waiting to be interviewed. And then, just feeling defeated, I was like, I'm not going to get the job, screw it. So I get in my little Astro van, and then a voice as clear as day said, go back. I was like, okay, you know. And at that point, you know, I've been
Go
walking.
back to the macaroni grill to interview?
Go back to, yeah. So, you know, that voice of God, you know, taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, dummy, go back." I was like, okay. So I go back, and then serendipity stepped in and ended up getting the job. And then a few weeks later, it was Valentine's night, and I see this cute little strawberry blonde, had the pigtails, just gorgeous, gorgeous woman standing at the end of the counter. And it was Valentine's night, and I said, "So what are you and your boyfriend doing for Valentine's tonight?" And she's like, "I don't have a boyfriend." I'm like, "All right, cool." So a little background research. And
Yeah.
then a few days later, she was waiting for a ride outside. And I said, "So what time am I picking you up for the movies tonight?" And she said, "You tell me." I was like, "Yes." And then, you know, a year later, we were married. So,
And that's
um,
the gem.
I set that up because as I became a married man and then had one child and then two children, I realized I had something I had to provide for my family. And
Mhm.
there's nothing like the pressure of providing for other human beings as a good motivator. So at that time, I was still working in restaurants, and I was working at the Red Lobster at that point in 2006. And I was about to go get a job at Pechanga Resort and Casino. But when I was working at Red Lobster one night, I was cleaning up all crab legs underneath the table, and I was entertaining people. I'm a great waiter. I'm fantastic. I'm entertaining. It's just a good time.
I
And,
bet.
yeah, it's really fun. And Mike and Robin Zing, which I'm sure you know, they're icons here in the local real estate market. They were sitting at a table and they said, "Hey," you know, they waved me over and they're like, "Man, you have a really good personality. Have you ever thought about getting into real estate?" And I said, "Realtors? They drop babies and they kick puppies. Why would I do that?" Right? Like I just viewed realtors as in a very negative way. And I was like,
Yeah.
"All right," you know, I'll take his business card. I'm like, "All right, thanks, guy." And then a few weeks later, I was watching one of those late night infomercials, and is, you know, one of those hour-long programs where if you buy my book, you know, you'll be an instant real estate success and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I could do that. And then so I called Mike Zing, and he got me enrolled in real estate school. And you know, you can take real estate school in about 6 weeks here in California, and it took me 18 months because, you know, the ADD kicked in and just trying to be a father and provide for my family. But it all came to a head when I had already transferred over to Pechanga Resort and Casino, and I was a casino host. And this was in 2008. And at the casino, as a casino host, your whole job is to reach out to the gamblers and bring them in and bring them into these tournaments because you're trying to build a relationship, and ultimately, so they're dropping money at the casino, right?
Right.
And but nobody knew who I was at these tournaments because there'd be thousands of people. And so, as a joke, when we're cold calling, you know, all of us casino hosts, there's about a dozen of us, and we're cold calling our list. And I started telling my people on the phone because I was trying to make the other people in the room laugh. I said, "Well, come find me. I'll be the bald guy in the red tie." And everyone, ha ha ha. Well, at the tournament that weekend, you know, as casino hosts, we had to go find our guests, which is impossible because you don't know what they look like. And, you know, there's thousands of people, but all of my guests were coming to me, right?
Because
So
of
I,
your
I
tie.
had,
Yeah.
because of the red tie and the bald head.
Uh-huh.
So, and being a marketing guy from my whole history and background, I realized, you know, marketing is all about a visual differentiation. That's what branding is. So
Yeah.
if you can stand in the middle of a crowd and like, for example, if you're in a crowd of 1,000 people and they said, "Hey, here's the logo. Can you find out where that person is?" Most of the time they're like, "Not really," right? But hey, who's the ball guy in the red tie? It stands out like a sore thumb, kind of thing, right? So I realized the light bulb went off at that point. And then concurrently, I had a friend that got me into the Monavie multi-marketing juice business. It's like $100 bottle of grape juice that was supposed to magically, you know, heal you. And so I figured, well, these gamblers, they're dropping thousands of dollars into slot
I can
machines.
afford that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can afford $100 bottle of juice. So I was on the down low selling Monavie juice to my gamblers. And then, you know, casinos, they have cameras every 3 feet. They know exactly what you're doing at all times. And so they called me in for the private investigation. And I just immediately knew, I was like, "Oh, I'm done." And so they lay out all this information. You know, it looked like an FBI interrogation. And and they're like, "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" I was like, "Well, I guess I don't work here anymore, huh?" And so they walked me out with security guards, and that was
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I could totally see that too. It's like, oh my gosh, when you
did
work, like I remember working for companies, back in the day, and being so stressed out to make sure that I was following the rules and doing
Yeah.
everything they wanted me to do. And I had nothing for myself. Like I just only, like I was a slave to them. And I
Right.
feel like, there's a lot of companies that work and they manage by intimidation. That is probably the biggest form of intimidation right there
Yeah.
that you could think of. And it's like, listen, I'm a human. I was just selling some juice over here. I'm not selling drugs. Like, come on.
Well, yeah, and it's funny how we rationalize things because I was like, well, if the gamblers are healthy, then they'll be
They'll
more,
spend more money and they'll
they'll
come
spend
back.
more time. But they weren't having it. The casino was like, yeah, no, you're fired. Okay. Did you get this magazine in the mail, by the way? I sent it to you the other day.
I will check to see. I don't know. I don't have it yet, but that's
All right. Well, I sent it
lobsters
to
with the
you.
red ties. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So let me see if I get that.
So my assistant, she actually worked at Red Lobster as well.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
know so many people that worked at that restaurant, and then of course, our old brokerage is in the same parking lot. Isn't that
Yeah.
ironic? But a lot of people started there at that restaurant in this valley. Like,
Well,
that's
I think
crazy.
restaurant work is incredible. I think it's a great training ground for realtors because
I
as
think
a waiter,
everyone, and I even tell my boys, only one, waits. He's a bartender
yeah,
now, for a brewery. Well, it's actually a pizza place, but he also worked for a brewery as well here in Temecula. But I told them when they first got their jobs, I said, you need to wait tables. Like
yeah,
you have to be in the restaurant industry. It teaches you how to speak to people. It teaches you about humans, how we act, good and bad sides. But
yep.
it just really sets you up for life. I think everyone should have to be in the restaurant industry at some point. Customer service, 100%.
100% agree with you because it teaches you about being of service, teamwork, coordinating. Because it's very similar to real estate in the sense that you got to be nice to the kitchen staff, or else your food's not going to be coming out on time, kind of thing, right?
Right?
It's like
Yeah.
when people are screaming at escrow officers, I'm like, why are you doing that? Because you want them on your side.
You want them on your side,
Yeah, you don't. And I think anyone that's ever done a deal with me that they realize that even when problems come up and the poo hits the fan, I'm always pretty level headed and just try to find the best situation and make it a win-win situation for all people. I think that's where our industry kind of went wrong so many ways is that people have this mentality of us versus them. And they
Mhm.
have to start crap out of a contract just to prove to their clients that they're fighting for them, kind of things. Like we're all trying to get to the same direction. Let's be kind. Let's
There you
figure
go.
out. Let's understand both sides of the table, and let's try to just make a good solution happen. But it just baffles me when people want to pick fights over the smallest things. But that's my perspective, and that comes from the restaurant business. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I started, I started, Burger King was my first job at 15 and a half.
Hmm.
And then I was a telemarketer as well. I had two jobs in high
Right.
school, right? So I was a telemarketer for a mortgage company. That's how I got my start in the industry at 15 and a half on the phones. Well, and then at 15, actually, as soon as I could get my work permit, I was door knocking and selling windows, siding, and doors.
So you had all the ingredients for
Oh
being a
my gosh,
successful
all
worker.
of it, right? And I had a newspaper route at 11. Like
So you
seriously.
have that same drive,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I just, I think, well, my story is very similar, but I mean, I had to hit the pavement running.
Yeah.
I was a foster child as well, so there's some history there. But I always had to fend for myself. Nobody else was going to do it for me, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to actually have empathy for those that don't come from that, and I've had to do a lot of work on that
Yeah.
in my adult life to have empathy. Empathy has just never been in my vocabulary.
Mm.
So anyway, another story. But so moving into your real estate industry or your real estate career, so you got started, and I'm going to bring this up, and I actually was trying to find the property the other day. I'm going to have you look it up and tell me what the address was, because this is when you and I first connected. And I think it was 2008, in fact, because we had just moved to Temecula.
Yeah.
It must have been like one of your very first listings.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling up to the property. It was, out like it was Hemet, but Winchester, like back in the day when it was just all like the sea of short sales were coming out.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I think your seller was still trying to sell and they were coming in and the market was folding, right?
Yep.
And, back when we were starting to, we just, it was either a short sale. The bank owns weren't even really out yet. They were just folding out, like, right? Just, I think Bob Cadez was like the biggest REO agent in our valley at that time. And he had like all the listings. We even bought our house from Bob Cadez, but
Everybody did.
what?
I said
Everybody,
everybody bought a house from Bob Cadez because he had
yeah,
all the listings.
he had all the listings, right? So,
Mhm.
but I remember pulling up outside in my minivan and I was meeting a client for the first time at your property. And I was brand new to short sales, brand new. And so I believe I called you on the phone and you were so nice. And I sure as heck didn't expect this young guy, the bald head, the bald guy with the red tie, for you to be so young. I thought you were going to be like some old man, like talking down to me. Yes, Miss Meeker. Well, but you were so nice. And I'll never forget that conversation. And we were both new and we
Yeah.
were both like, what do I do? Kind of thing. And you're like, well, this is what's going on with my seller. And I'm like, okay, great. And we didn't end up, I don't think we ended up writing on that property, but I just remember your kindness and your generosity and just your friendship that you started even then. And we didn't even know each other. And then we circled back around when we were with our past brokerage where we had, it was a blessing to actually work alongside you and to get to know you more. I know we shared a lot of, amazing conversations about the market, what we're doing in our businesses. And, you were there for me to vent on a lot. And hopefully I was there for you as well. But um, I've just really respected how you have always stayed true to what your vision is for your business, right?
Yeah.
So, even though, there was conversations where I'm like, just build a team, just go, you can do this. And you're like, nope, I want to be right here because my kids come first. And I want to make sure that I'm there for them as a dad. And a lot of that stemmed back to your upbringing and
Mhm.
making sure that you were there for your kids. So do you mind to just, elaborate on how important that is? I've just always had so much respect for you on that because this business can suck you in.
Yeah.
It can suck you in, turn you around, chew you up, and spit you out just as fast as you get into it, right? And you've just
100%.
always dug your heels in and you've stayed consistent.
Well, so thank you for saying all those kind words. You're very generous with all that, and I appreciate that. And but to be completely transparent and vulnerable with the audience here is that because I was in such a hyperdrive of wanting to be successful, but then also just needing to provide for my family. I was working when I was a new agent from 2008 to 2015. I was a workaholic. I would work, 12, 18-hour days, no problem. And I really kind of would get frustrated with the wife and kids because at that point, like, we at that point we had 3 kids under the age of 5.
Yeah.
And
I've been
yeah, and that's a very, people always romanticize that age, like, oh, so cute. That's all the new things are happening in child development and all that kind of stuff. And it's very important. But I found it very frustrating because I don't deal well with, screaming meltdown toddlers and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up analyzing it because my dad was not there in those first 5 years of my life. And my stepdad came around when I was about 5, 6 years old. But so I just didn't have the mental wiring of what it meant to be a dad on that day to day kind of thing. Like my dad would come in every few months and be Disneyland dad, and we'd have a great time and all that kind of stuff. But so I found those first couple of years very challenging. And so what I did is I just really dove into real estate and work and all that kind of stuff because that's where I found my validation, right? But
So similarity there, though. You dove in and somewhat self-medicated yourself with the business, with the
right,
industry, right? Because
right.
you didn't know really how to, uh, you didn't really know what to do with that information, is what you're
Well,
saying,
correct.
right?
I didn't know how to be a good dad because I just didn't have that blueprint, unfortunately. And whereas I knew how to get validation through business and creative ideas and all that kind of stuff. So I doubled down on that. And then so I was kind of on that path of just, in this business, it's like if you do 20 deals, you want to do 40 deals. And then if you do 40 deals, you want to do 100 deals. And, it's always chasing numbers.
Yeah.
And I had an older wise man share with me. He said, if you're always chasing numbers, numbers never end. So where do you draw the line at, kind of thing, right? And you can climb the ladder to the top of success on the tallest building, but if you get to the top of the ladder and you look around and nobody's around you because you burnt out your family, and workaholics are very challenging to live with because there's just always that kind of edge that they have, because you could tell that they'd rather be doing something else instead of playing a board game with their kids or whatnot. And so in 2015, I was having one of those soul moments where the leaves were falling again. So again, that seasonal pattern of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was coaching with the wonderful Wendy Whitelaw, and
Love
I love her. She's
Say hi, Wendy.
she's an amazing human being. And
Yes.
so when I first sat down with her, she said, okay, well, why are we here? What are you hoping to get out of this? I said, well, I want to do 100 deals next year. I want to recruit 100 agents. I want to, and it was all these number-based things and all this kind of stuff. And Wendy, in her gracious, beautiful, wonderful way, broke it down for me. She's like, okay, well, if you achieve all of that, you make the $1 million, you do all these kind of things. What does that get you? Like, what is it that you're really wanting from that? I'm like, well, if I had all of that, then I can go ride dirt bikes with my kids in the field and I can do all this kind of stuff. And she's like, well, do you need $1 million to do that? And it was one of those simple things that just kind of shattered the whole glass house of your understanding. I said, well, I guess not. And she's like, well, how much money do you really need to do all that kind of stuff? And so we kind of broke it down, and I came to realize, like, I don't need to be that guy that does 100 transactions a year. This industry is very ego driven, and it's great to be successful. And I hope everybody achieves whatever that they want to achieve. But I came to realize I'm good with 20, 30 deals a year. I mean, especially here in Southern California, the price points, the commission breaks and all that kind of stuff. That's a good income. And what I realized is I was able to balance my life out. And instead of working, 12, 18 hours a day, I can now work, say, maybe 10 to 20 hours a week and achieve all of that. And then the rest of the time is spent with family and making those memories, which is ultimately when we come to our final moments, that's what you're really going to be working. You think it through. You're not going to be at the end of it on your deathbed and go, oh man, I wish I put more lock boxes up. You know what I mean? So that's where I invested. So thanks, Wendy Whitelaw, for that.
She is simply amazing. And Wendy, I will be reaching out to you soon too, by the way, girl. But yeah, I feel like there's just, we only have so much time, on this earth. And, we picked an industry that will suck you in, and, I've said this to agents in the past, like, if you don't know or try to figure out what you want out of this business,
right,
be careful.
Right.
And, people on the outside of our world, they have no idea. They have
right.
really no idea what it's like to run a real estate business. Number one, to get started, the investment that it takes. Two, to stick with it, because the duration to get from 0 to 1 could be 12 months, right? And you're in the hole, right? But most importantly is to align yourself and get yourself into rooms where you can lean on people. And I know when we both started, I've been in the industry as a whole since I was 15. I've been blessed to be around some of the most smartest people in the real estate and mortgage sector than I've ever been in my entire life. And I still contribute to being a salesperson. Because I am a salesperson, you're a salesperson. I own that. I love that. I have a ton of pride for that. I know it's gotten a bad rep, in the years. And I remember when I was younger, to be a salesperson was like, the grime and dirty. But I'm so grateful to be a salesperson. You know why? Because I get to help people. I get to find their pain points and help them through those pain points. I get to help them win, right? And I wasn't raised like that. But one of the best salespeople of my entire life was my brother. And that guy could do circles in any type of industry around anyone. You know why? Because he had a heart.
Yep.
And he cared, right? And so being in real estate, people don't realize, like, we're humans. But most of my friends that are successful and those that aren't my friends that I look at, they started in here because they came across something that was really a transition in their life. They usually came in on their heels, like with nothing, right? And they've built themselves to some place based on caring about others and giving back,
Well,
right?
and that is the beauty of this business. And what's funny is I actually interviewed Wes Schaefer, who's known as the sales whisperer. And because I too kind of struggled with the term salesmanship, because unfortunately it's just gotten such a bad rap.
It
The
really has, but it's actually,
sales. And then he said something that was so enlightening because Wes Schaefer, if you don't know him, he's a fascinating, brilliant man. But he said, sales, the word sales, I don't know, I forgot what country it was, but the root word of that means service.
oh, okay. I can,
So I forgot
yeah,
what the nationality of it was, but he said it's basically to be a servant. And what's funny about that is that my last name Butler means servant. So
yes.
really, I'm just kind of destined, you know,
That's in the
for
serve.
all. Yeah.
So, with your real estate business though, and being, and we've gone over a little bit here. I hope that's okay. You doing okay on time?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Perfect.
I'm
Okay.
present.
Perfect. So I want to talk about too, and that's why I led into that being a father,
Hmm.
being the sole provider of your family, right?
Right.
And I've met Jen. She's absolutely beautiful. Like you
It
are
is.
so lucky to have such a beautiful lady. But not only that, she's right there by your side. But the pressure of being the sole provider in a family, raising children, has its own issues, right? And its
Oh yeah.
own level of pressure. And so, with that, you had to be really purposeful with your time to be able to
Yeah.
get in, work 20 hours a week, because this is not a 20-hour a week career. It's
Right.
really 24/7, but you were purposeful for 20 hours of that time through that week, right? So,
Right.
what did you do in your business that another agent could take away from um, your uh, your disciplines that you did in order to maybe try to have that 20-hour a week? And it could be new, doesn't matter, new agent or an agent that's been in the business forever, a veteran, doesn't matter, but they're struggling with, I really want to spend more time with my family, and or I want to take more vacations, more time for myself. So what would I need to do in order to? What would that look like? What would I need to do?
Um, so when you understand the process of real estate, whether it's on the buyer side or on the listing side, you realize that it is a process. And
Hmm.
so there's certain phases, there's certain steps, excuse me, there's certain steps that you got to take. And then after you've been doing this long enough, you realize that all clients, they all have their own uniqueness to their situation and to their lives. But for the most part, I would say 90% of it, you always get the same questions. You always get the same, um, uh, maybe a deal falls apart in a certain way, and all
Hmm.
these kind of things. And so years ago, what I did, being the video king in real estate, is I started making videos, just 1 minute videos of the most common questions that people ask or the common problems and situations and all that kind of stuff. So that way, when your client calls you at 11 o'clock on Friday, which I don't answer those calls anymore, but
Yeah.
those panic moments that the clients have, I could just, my YouTube channel is really more a quiver for all my arrows, and the videos are the arrows. And so I can send them that video. So instead of spending 20, 30 minutes or an hour explaining the whole process, I can give them a 1 minute video and they go, oh, okay. Right. And so that alone took out a big chunk of my time needed to invest in the business. And another thing is that, majority of realtors, what they spend the majority of their time doing is prospecting, which is fantastic because that's how you generate business. But using the ball guy red tie attraction based model, what I figured out at Pachanga, right? So instead of chasing the gamblers, instead of chasing your clients, I say, well, how do I get them to come to me? And
Yeah.
so I used my branding, I used social media, and then I used video. And I started doing video in 2009 and posting it to Facebook. And if you remember that time frame, social media was a toddler, right? Facebook was just getting its legs. YouTube was a new thing. Video marketing was a new thing. But I realized, what are my strengths? My strengths is the personality, the humor, the articulation, all these kind of things. And so I started making videos and I would put it out there. And this is before, Facebook became a pattern of algorithms and all this kind of stuff. But I was one of the first people to do all that kind of stuff in this local area. And so what it did is, instead of me having to go do open houses or cold call or door knock or farm a geographical area or whatnot, I can have fun, do what I do best, put the video out there. And then videos I would try to make evergreen. So I wouldn't say, hey, here's the July 2009 update. I would make it more of, hey, I'm doing this fun thing over here. If you want to do a fun thing, then come find me and we'll go do it together. And so it turned the tables where that's where business just comes to me, kind of thing. And so I save, 20 to 30 hours a week on not having to prospect. So, whereas if I did prospect, I'd probably be a lot more successful. But that was my form of generating business, and it seemed to work.
Sure. And you're still doing that today, right? So
Very
the
much so.
videos they'll live on forever.
Right. And that's why I do those videos in an evergreen way. So that way they can be like, there's people that will call me off the bald guy goes to boot camp video that I did 12 years ago, and so it's entertaining, which it aligns with my core value system. I love to entertain people. And, I also like being on video, turn the camera on, I'm ready to go. And then people seem to like it.
So you've leveraged video. And
Right.
I mean, I just heard probably two positions that as an agent, because I think that the other information that either people that are getting into the industry and I talk to agents about this a lot. They're a year in, up to 5 years in, and they refuse to leverage video. They
Mm,
refuse to leverage like a virtual assistant or even have an assistant in order to have a better life, right? In order to, because if you're doing 25 transactions, you and I both know if you don't leverage something, it's going to kill you.
right.
Because we are the assistant, we are the buyer agent, we are the listing agent, we're the listing concierge, we are their vessel to escrow, to title, to the HOA, to everything, right? And so
Right.
you cannot physically run a successful business and do it well with that type of process, right? Or that model. And I'll coach with clients or or agents and just talking with them and mentoring them and saying the first thing you have to do is lay it out. What do you want from this industry? What are your goals? Where are you headed in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? Because if you want to be here, this is what you have to implement in your business, right? And so you leveraged YouTube, you leveraged Facebook, you all by video and doing educational videos so that even though you had to, maybe you had to put the video out there to your client, which is fine, right? What does that take you? Maybe 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day to do that, right? But that video, leveraging video is what you did in order to gain yourself that extra 10 hours a week, right? In theory.
Absolutely. And so the video does a lot of the heavy lifting. And then also, I'm a great chess player, meaning I can anticipate the moves and behaviors of other people before they happen, or before I'm always 10 steps ahead kind of thing. And
Sure.
so understanding the process and understanding the questions that your clients might have, if you can proactively nip it before they even know what it is, like, oh, hey, by the way, when we get into this part of the process, you're going to experience this. So here's a video about that. So you already know what it is. And then it never becomes an issue for them because they're like, you've already told them what's going to happen. So properly setting expectations is huge. And then so if you can use that with the videos, then that just makes your life better. But ultimately, the most important thing is that it makes your clients' experience better. Because where clients get stressed and they feel anxious is when they don't know what's about to happen, right? And it's a human, natural, psychological response is that if they don't know what's about to happen, then the anxiety increases. And when anxiety increases, the fear increases. And when the fear increases, the anger increases. And so that's why when you get those big blowups with clients sometimes, it's because their expectations weren't set properly. And so if you can understand the psychology of what that person is going through, and then preemptively and proactively address those issues before they even know that's an issue, that's where they get that magical experience. And that's where, they get to the end of it and like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. I thought it was going to be way worse and all that kind of stuff. And they don't even realize all the strings that you're pulling in the background. They just think it looks easy. So that's what I always aim for.
Right. Well, and if you're an agent that doesn't have the videos like what you have put together, the educational videos, I feel that, checklists would be in order, right? So a checklist where you're firing off, emails to update. But, I know for us, we have a buyer and a seller guide that we give to our clients where it's more, hands-on touching, versus maybe the videos. I'm definitely going to write that down. It's been on my checklist to do for quite some time. To put together educational videos. So I think it's really important that the client does know the next process, especially with us being in a market right now that's more normalizing and not moving so fast. I think we could get away with it the last, couple of, and I'm going to say 4 years, because even though we were through the pandemic and it was just race, right? But 2 to 3 years, even before the pandemic, we were pretty lucky. I don't want to say lucky. I know we weren't lucky because we put in the work, right? But a lot of agents got lucky, right, wrong, or ugly, or whatever it may be. But, at the end of the day, having checklists, having a process to follow, having systems in place to be able to execute for the better experience of the consumer or your client is definitely key.
Huge. I mean, because ultimately, the focal point of a real estate transaction is the client. It's all about taking care of the client, because that's the service and the fiduciary duty that we have towards our clients. And so whatever we can do to make that experience better, that's I think the ultimate calling of our service. And so if you are of service into that degree and to provide that type of experience, I think you'll do very well.
So are you currently reading like any books or anything that you would like to share that you've read in the past, maybe 6 months or so, that you'd like to share with any agents that would help them with their business? Or?
I am. First one being The Stare by John Butler. So make sure you get that copy on Amazon. Great book. And then I'm going through Brene Brown's Dare to Lead.
Okay.
And so here at the office on Tuesdays at 4:00, we have a book club. Myself, Susan Ebert, and a gentleman named Bobski. And so we'll read a chapter every Tuesday. And so it's just kind of fun to get together and talk ideas and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we do there. And then as far as books, I think right now, the season that I'm in right now, talking about the leaves falling and new things blossoming. So, I spent the past 14 years doing the videos, and I kind of got to a point where I felt like I did as much as I wanted to do with all that. And then so my new thing that I'm doing is writing my own magazine called The Red Tie Community, which, Kim, you gotta.
I'm gonna go check today.
It's in the mail.
Okay.
And so,
what is the Red Tie Community? Are you getting ready to go into that?
Yeah.
Bring that up. Okay.
Yeah. So, the podcast show was called Red Tie Community. But if you actually go back into some of my earlier videos, I think in 2009 was the first time I uttered greetings, Red Tie Community. It's the bald guy in the red tie. And so that was always my intro into all of my videos and stuff like that. Unbeknownst to me, that what I was really doing is I was laying the foundation, because for me, it's all about the sphere of influence and the relationships that you have. And so community means bringing multiple people together and having a unified vision for something. And so I always just wanted to have my community, right? It's kind of like Mr. Rogers, won't you be my neighbor kind of thing. And but my true purpose on this planet, real estate's my occupation, but my purpose is writing and to inspire and encourage other people. And so what you're going to be seeing from these magazines, the Red Tie Community magazine, is me telling a lot of those stories over the past 14 to 25 years that I've collected in short format. It's about 2,000 words, every article and story. And the ultimate purpose is to inspire and encourage other people to find their purpose. And yeah, it'll talk about real estate a little bit, but it's not like, hey, I'm a realtor. It's more of, here was the challenge of how we navigated this situation. And, oh, by the way, I sell real estate. So that's kind of my approach. So I'm pretty excited about that. And what's really cool is my 17-year-old son is the one that did all the graphic layout in the magazine.
Wow.
So I'm teaching him about marketing and branding and all that kind of stuff. And it's just awesome to be side by side with him and then see, and he gets to see that creation process, and he gets to see the fruits of those labors and how that ripple effect happens. So it's really cool to kind of help build that next generation of marketing DNA. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. Well, John, first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for jumping on here today. So if we wanted to find your podcast, where could we find that?
If you go to youtube.com/baldguyredtie, you'll find a lot of them there. I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube, so it's a little bit challenging to navigate through. But ultimately, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, if you want to reach out to me, facebook.com, instagram.com/baldguyredtie, and you're like, hey, John, send me a video. I'll be more than happy to send you whatever you might want. And I have videos from Sheriff Chad Bianco to Santa Claus on the podcast show. So I've interviewed just about every walk of life. And I'll leave you off with this, Kim, as you venture into the podcast space, is that this video is about an hour long right now, right?
Yeah.
And so you got that one solid loaf of bread for the video. What I
Right.
would encourage you to do is watch the video and send it to your video editing guy, and then chop out the nice little sections, the little 45-second blurbs, the 1-minute blurbs, 3-minute blurb, whatever was a good section out of this. Because then you can turn that one video into 10, 15, 20 different videos.
Right.
You get the biggest bang for your buck if you can break that into slices, and then you could spread those breadcrumbs out in the water, all with the same marketing material that you have. So so that for you and for whoever else might want to do podcasts. So
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you later. Okay.
All right. See you in escrow. Bye.
Well, hopefully very soon, right? We need to do a deal together. It's been way too long.
It's always fun working with you.
All right. Hang on there just for a quick minute, if you will. And then I'll go ahead and end this. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.